When your best offensive player is your best defensive player, you have what it takes to start winning.
Blues rookie Doug Gilmour scored his first National Hockey League goal in the third period. That tied the game at 2. Turnbull, the assist. It came at 6:34 of the final period.
If they get one here, here's Gilmour coming in. The backhand rebound. He scores! Gilmour gets that goal we were just talking about. And it's 3-1. Calgary.
That he would one day find his way to the Hockey Hall of Fame. Killer would play 5 strong seasons for St. Louis before being dealt to the Flames, where he would become a Stanley Cup champion in 1989. Over his 20-year NHL career, in which he would play 1,474 games, he also suited up in New Jersey, Chicago, Buffalo, Montreal, and was a member of the victorious Canada Cup team of 1987. But at no time was he loved more than when he played for our city, than when he was a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs. No one has ever scored more points in a single season for the Leafs. And of the 870 players to suit up for Toronto, he remains the club's all-time playoff scoring leader. Please welcome, from Kingston, Ontario, Doug Gilmour.
Thank you. Okay, I'm not Doug, but thank you very much. I'm David Marscale. I'm the CEO here at the museum. He played for so many teams, I guess he just couldn't hold down a job. I don't know. But I wanted to welcome everybody and get right to the main event. But first of all, I just want to acknowledge one of our board of directors, Paul Salvini, at the back here. Thank you, Paul, and your family. And again, thank you all very, very much for coming. This is been a bit of a tradition here. We've started an evening with. We've had previous special guests with Robbie Alomar, Jesse Barfield, Fergie Jenkins, and their slides might come up in a bit. There they are. There's 2 of them. And they've been awesome evenings. And tonight we'll continue, as Kitchener is such an awesome hockey town. Just out of interest, how many are Montreal Canadian fans? Hey, you see him? He's right here. Okay. Detroit Red Wings? Whoa, a few more. Toronto Maple Leaf? Okay. So we're just delighted. I'm just personally delighted to bring a Hockey All-Star to the town. There's a silent auction, which you probably saw at the back. It'll close 15 minutes after Doug finishes speaking. There's signed Maple Leaf sticks. The team has signed the team from 2015, Hockey Night in Canada, branded air hockey table stuff. Oh, here you can see it all. The Jaguar weekend rental is kind of cool. You get the car for the weekend and tons of Toronto Maple Leaf merchandise. Thank you very, very much to Sleeman Breweries, 570 News, Intrigue Media, and Sports X Express, who have helped support tonight's event. Also, Driver's Seat for providing the official designated driver service for this event. So if you want to have a couple of drinks, they'll make sure you get home safely. To everyone who purchased a VIP package, it was great to see everybody up there, or a general admission ticket. It all supports what we try to do here at the museum. And to those who donated to the auction. And I'd like to thank Dave Bidini, who is awesome, and Doug Gilmour. So let me just do that again. This round of applause is for Dave Bidini. And he gets to introduce the other guy. Dave has become a friend. He's become a friend of the museum. He's been here. He interviewed Jesse and Roberto. He's a great MC for the evening. He's an author, a musician. He's been nominated for a Gemini, a Genie, a Juno, as well as CBC Canada Reads. He is the founding member of the Rio Statics, who recently came back together. Rio Statics, applause over here. Let's do who recently came back together a week or 2 ago and played a couple of shows at the AGO in Toronto. He formed the Bidini Band, has written 12 books, including Tropic of Hockey and Baseballissimo. I think that's Italian or something. Thanks. And for a date to be determined, we're working together, Dave and I and a couple of his colleagues, and I'll get Dave to talk a bit about this when he comes up, but something called Puck Talks. And it's an evening where some pretty cool people come together as a panel and really dive into hockey conversations really deep. It's not just for the general fan. It's they've done this with baseball and so on, but Dave's putting it together here for us. And with that, I'd like to invite Dave Bidini to the stage. Thank you, Dave. Thank you. Thanks, Dave. You got a mic over there?
Thanks, Dave. How's it going, everyone? You all look beautiful, as always. Charming crowd. Yeah, we're pretty excited and lucky tonight. I had a memory of Doug and the Leafs of '93, and I think a lot of us who are sports fans have been thinking a lot about '93 lately, because it was such a glorious time for sports in Southern Ontario. Because of the Blue Jays World Series run and because of the Leafs' great playoff run of that year. And I've also been thinking a little bit about it because I've got stuff to do in October, and I placed in all the dates for the Jays' prospective postseason and found 3 or 4 conflicts, which is harrowing. So I'm not sure how I'm going to honor my commitments with the Jays playoff games happening, but it reminded me in '93, the Rio Statics, my band, were doing a tour of Southern Ontario during the Leafs playoff run of that year, and Game 7, the Leafs against the St. Louis Blues, we had a show at the Princess Theatre in Waterloo, and you know, it was Game 7. Anything could have happened. If they win, they go on and play the Los Angeles Kings. So we took the stage. Really, just end of the first period, game tied. I think the game was tied. Anyways, it was a close score, or whatever. We played the set, and around 3/4 of the way through the set, the crowd was silenced, and I asked if anybody in the crowd had a score of the game, and a dude stood up from his chair and pumped his fist in the air and said, 6-1 Leafs! And it was ended up being the greatest gig ever because the Leafs had won that night, and they're going to play Los Angeles Kings. So thinking a lot about that and about those teams and about Doug and about that great set of players that played in '93 and all that we're going through right now following the Blue Jays' success. Our impressions of Doug and his play at that time are really emblazoned and burned in our memories as fans of the Leafs and fans of hockey in Southern Ontario, because he reminded us of so many great players cut from the same cloth who played with the Leafs prior, in years and decades prior, people like Sil Apps and Dave Keon in particular. Players for whom heart was really too small a word to describe what they did on the ice and the way they carried themselves on the ice and the way they competed. My daughter's middle name is Abel, named after Sid Abel, who was a centerman for Gordie Howe, played in Detroit. And he was a similar stature as Doug, but played with a real, true, honest fierceness and competitiveness that elevated all of his teams. So I've said enough about him, but let's meet the man. Ladies and gentlemen, Doug Gilmour. There he is. Standing O, we haven't even done anything yet. It's pretty good.
It's been a while for standing O.
There you go. Why don't we start at the beginning? Reading a little bit about growing up in Kingston, and one of the figures that I'm fascinated by is your older brother, David. And I was unaware before I started to find out a little bit about your past that he was a great hockey player himself. How important was he to you, and how much did you learn about the game and the way to play the game through him?
Well, growing up in Kingston, Ontario, my parents both worked at the penitentiary system. My brother was drafted by, I think it was Peterborough Petes, and he got traded to London Knights, and he played with Darryl Sittler and Dan Maloney. He spent about 6 or 7 years in the minors before he retired and came back. Dave was a great athlete. He was a great player. Let's get it out now. Don Cherry went to school with my parents. That's why he's biased. He coached my brother in Rochester as well. So that's kind of the history of Don. We've been family, friends growing up with my parents. So so when David came back, his attitude was a little bit different. You know, as far as criticism, you've got to take it, you got to absorb it. He would more or less not enjoy criticism from a coach, and kind of put himself out of the league. So, but he told me all about this, and again, it's something that growing up in a small town, and I was a defenseman. I wore number 4. Bobby Orr. And so when I was offensive, and so I get home after a game, and my dad says to me, or I go to get my stuff out of the car. I had 2 goals and 2 assists that night, and he goes, "No, leave it there." I was okay. He goes, "You didn't do anything tonight." So played the next day, and didn't get any points. Got out of the car, walked towards the house. He goes, no, get back here. That's the best game I've ever seen you play. So it was more work ethic than skill, and taught me at an early age. And it wasn't yelling and screaming. It was just say, you're not going to go anywhere if you don't work hard.
At what point could you be self-aware of that? At what point could you console yourself knowing that you had actually worked hard?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that I had to work hard. In my draft year, I was 5'9", 136-pound defenseman. So I got to Cornwall, and all of a sudden I was center. And it was pretty much the same thing. You see you're back in your zone, you see the whole ice, but now you don't have to skate backwards. So it was a transition that didn't take too long, but I think it was 8 games into my rookie season. I got cross-checked into the post and broke my collarbone.
Do you remember who threw that cross-check?
No, I do not. Well,
You never vengefully carried his name?
no,
Okay.
no. That was a French league, so. But it was just, again, I think through the whole process, where people always say you're too small, too small. And during that year, I had a gentleman from Kingston. He's a judge now, Brian Abrams. His sons are the Abrams brothers.
Amazing band.
Amazing band. And he had a little Christian saying, a person shows what he is by what he does with what he has. And that's what I lived with my whole career.
How much for you about what formed you as the player and person you are is informed by the experiences you had in your hometown? Because Voyageurs, you're playing in Kingston, you know, you friends and family, you're playing among friends and family, and you were only playing 3 minutes a game in the beginning. How did that struggle inform who you became?
Yeah, it was the draft was not a 16-year-old draft; it was a 17-year-old draft. So, or it was 16, but you're going in the league at 17. So, I'm playing in my hometown, Kingston Voyageurs. Again, 3 minutes a game, and I just said to my mom after the game, I said, you know what, I might as well go play major midget and play more and develop. So when that happened, I left. They gave me my release. And as soon as I got my release, the Belleville Bulls, Tier 2, instead of Junior B, they called me. And that was the first year expansion of Tier 2. And they called me, and I went. And then I got drafted in the 3rd round to Cornwall, and then just started my career. And there's so many great players in that team in Cornwall. Mark Crawford was our captain, old NHL coach, Dale Howarchuk. You know, back-to-back cups, and I'm sorry to bring that up, Kitchener, but we did win in Windsor against Kitchener, and it was just an amazing time. It really was.
So, having the Bulls pick you up is interesting, and just the fact that somebody obviously saw something. Is there a person in this history that?
Yeah, the gentleman Larry Mavety that
Sure.
brought me into Kingston 7 years ago, and you know, it's from leaving home when you're 16, 17 years old and have an opportunity to come back and see your mom and dad, everything that their time that they put in for you, it was a blessing in disguise for me to go home. Yes, I left the Leaf organization, but you know what? My dad passed away 2 years ago, so I spent the last 5 years that I would have never got back.
So much of the story of your professional life is about, you know, overcoming, and just as often are the stories of really being neglected. This couple of times when you're undrafted and unrecognized. What about you? What about you was able to resist, you know, the option of not quitting, where you had that perseverance? Now you're on the other side of it, many years on the other side of it. When you look back at yourself as a young man, can you perceive what gave you that fortitude?
Not really. It's a really tough question, and how you developed and how mental tough you have to be at different times. And you know, I think as I had my first year was an average year, my second year was a pretty good year, and then playing in Cornwall against Kitchener Rangers, I got in a fight with Mike Eagles, and I'm a lefty. I didn't know he was a lefty, and he broke my nose and cheekbone. So I figured out I wasn't the best fighter out there and better concentrate on hockey. So it's something that, again, when you put your helmet on, it's just like your attitude changes. It's win at all costs. And some of the stuff I'd done, when I took my helmet off, I look back and go, did I really do that? Yeah, I did. But it's my survival time, and that's how I had to play. They thought I was nuts, and but I had to have that edge. That, like, when I was playing in St. Louis, my nickname, was Charlie. So, and man, I had a mullet. I looked like Charlie Manson, and it turned into Killer. Right. So it was Charlie Manson. So it wasn't a really great name.
Well, and people do say about, a young Doug Gilmour into the league, and even throughout your career, that he was capable of doing, you could do, you terrified some opponents because you were so unpredictable, and you would do whatever it took to win. Was that a bit of a mind game that you had to cultivate in order to get an advantage?
Yeah, and there wasn't as many replays. So I remember when I was playing in Montreal, we're playing in Ottawa, and there's a gentleman named Chara. He picked me up like this, threw me against the glass, and I came down the glass. I two-handed him in the back of the legs. He goes down, now he's my height. Stuck my stick right in his eye. I said, you ever do that again, I'm going to take your eye out. And he's like, okay.
Well, Nolan Ryan, the pitcher, once said, pitching is the art of instilling fear. Is that part of what hockey is, too?
Yeah, it's, again, I go in before a game, the preparation. Let me just borrow this for a second. Here's the media notes before a game. Okay, I'm going to be playing against Chicago tonight. So Smith's going to take my head off. Chelios is going to take my knee out. Marchman's going to take my knee out. And I'm going down the list. And I'm like, okay. So, mentally you got to be ready. And at the same time, it's almost, you had to, with everything you had in you, and you just can't quit. And you keep going back at them, go back at them. They knew, because as soon as they turned around, I'm going to slash them in the calf. I'm going to slash them hard. By the third period, that calf is going to cramp. I got him. So there's a lot of little things that again, if I'm in front of the net and I get cross-checked, I'm going down, but my skate's coming up. You go in the boards. You go in the boards with your stick first, and it's going to get them right in the gut.
You're very creative in this capacity.
Well, you have to. You have to be. And again, that's why they gave me a little bit more room, maybe more than I deserved.
So, not to get too far ahead, but inside of all of that, and if that's one of the ways your game was defined, it was also defined by heroic goal scoring and a lot of points. Did you? Maybe let's get to St. Louis now, and maybe Jacques Demers a little bit. But at what point did the finesse player, did the great, quick like lightning goal scorer, passer evolve? Was that always kind of there? Was it latent, and did it take someone to draw that out of you?
Well, my last year junior, I had 177 points, and St. Louis Blues, they had, I think, 5 returning players, centermen. And Jacques Demers was the coach, and he goes, "Can you check?" Oh, here's a contract. My signing bonus was $10,000. It was 25 in the minors or 60,000 pro. Said, I can check. So, and that's what I did. So I happened to play, 18 to 20 minutes a game. I'm playing against Gretzky, Marcel Dion, every best centerman, Denny Savard that's in the league, I get to play against and learn from, and just go out to see what they do. I know I'm not going to get power play time yet. Then Jacques Demers left for Detroit, and then Jacques Martin came in, and it just kind of took off from there, where I didn't have to. I still played defensively, but I just didn't have to check. So
I see. Okay.
I ended up with 100-some points that year.
Right. Interesting. When I think back, one of the great series that you played in was the '87 Canada Cup, and it's funny, I had always assumed that you were a member of that team coming out of Calgary, but it was actually you were a member of the Blues when you were called that team. '87 looms large in our imaginations when we think back about really one of the greatest series of all time. And you were certainly not a lock to make that team. How important was camp for you? How important was making that team?
Well, I didn't think I was going to make it. The Eiserman, you had all these young players that were coming in as well, and it was such a creative time. Like, we had guys that could fly, like Mike Gartner and Paul Coffey, but we'd do drills in practice, like just bring the nets up a little bit, and we'd probably do about 6 laps and stop, and then take a little break, do 6 laps. The fastest guy out there when you're cutting was Gretz. Gretzky was the fastest guy, and like straight ahead, he was pretty fast too. Not as fast as these other guys.
His edge.
Yeah, but he just could really, really cut. So Mike Keenan was the coach, and the last 2 players, they had to make 1 cut, and it was myself, or Dave Poulin and I. And Dave Poulin had to be the captain of the Philadelphia Flyers, which Mike Keenan was coaching. And the older players pretty much went to Keenan and said, no, we want to keep this guy. So I didn't play a lot. I learned a lot. And every game was 6-5. The first game was in Montreal. The next 2 were in Hamilton. If you check the stats, I scored the game-winning goal the first game. That's the game we lost. It went off my stick, top shelf over Grant Fuhr. So, again, guys, there's the lineup. That's Mario Lemieux's kind of coming out party, and playing with Gretz is just very overwhelming for a 24, 25-year-old player. That with these guys, it was just a great experience.
And did you play in Rendezvous so that's...
I did so well, I never got invited back.
Right, okay. But out of that, and then before you came to Toronto, a member of the Calgary Flames, and you mentioned Jacques Demers and Jacques Martin, and whenever I have had a chance to have Perry Berezin or Gord Shervin or Lanny, they always talk about Badger Bob. And you maybe talk a little bit about your role on that team, and because if the offense is sort of emerging from you, I think when we think about those 2 days, we think about the mastery of the two-way game. Well, for so many players of that Flames team, but how did you see your role on that club?
Well, Badger Bob was already gone, and Terry Crisp was the coach.
Okay.
So everybody, we won the cup that year. We had 115 points. Montreal was second with 114. It was just so we won the President's Trophy. It was just a great year. Everybody, again, just Theo Fleury was our 4th-line center that year as a rookie, and you know how well he turned out. He was a great player. So a lot of experience. It was a lot of fun, and obviously the leadership we had there with Lanny McDonald. It went from Jim Ploplinski to just the whole. It's hard to say because there's so many guys that were instrumental to our win. We had a gentleman from Sweden, Håkan Lube, that didn't play a long time, but he was one heck of a player.
And what was it like? You're playing the Montreal Canadiens and in the Forum and winning the cup. Is that what is that feeling like when you're in that moment? You scored 2 goals, which you mentioned in the Stanley Cup winning game as well. So obviously would have had one of your great games. But what's it like when you're in that moment? Can you take us through before, during, and after?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that you're Game 6 in Montreal, and we have an opportunity to win the cup, and you just don't want to let this go. So your focus is, you're not really going to sleep in the afternoon. You're just going to have a meal, think about what you got to do, get to game time, and really make sure your line mates are prepared. And everybody's got to kind of defend for themselves, but you need your line mates and you need your defense partners that are out there.
And your line mates are who?
Colin Patterson and Joe Mullen. And Colin was kind of the defensive guy on the line, and then Joey and I were the offensive side of it. So it was just a great experience. It was a wonderful team. We just had, not this past summer, the summer before, it's the 25th anniversary of the Stanley Cup. So got to see everybody, and it was just a really unique moment. And I'm going to fast forward this now how I got to Toronto. I had to go, Cliff Fletcher already left and came to Toronto, and we're playing in San Francisco before San Jose rink was built. So I'm going through arbitration right now with Doug Risebrough, who's the general manager, and I think I was awarded $375, something like that, and he wasn't too happy. So I get up in the morning and go to the bathroom about 7 a.m. and had a joining door as a hotel next to me happened to be the GM. So Doug Risebrough said, I don't care, I'm trading that Gilmour, I'm doing this.
Oh, God.
I'm like...
The glass to the wall?
Oh, yeah. I was laying down for about a half hour. My roommate, Tim Sweeney, he got up, he goes, what is wrong with you? I said, your name's involved here too, come on.
He hates you.
Oh. So I called my agent up, and about 3 weeks later, it's New Year's Eve, we're playing. Hockey Canada is in Calgary at that time. So I had him contact Hockey Canada, so I'm going to leave my contract and go play with Team Canada for $30,000. And I can't deal with this guy anymore. I love my teammates, but Doug Risebrough and I, we didn't like each other on the ice, and we didn't really like each other off the ice.
And were you ever teammates?
No.
No. Okay.
No. So New Year's Eve came up. I had all my sticks out of the dressing room, except 4 before the game. We beat Montreal that night. The next morning, I came in, had a team party, and I got to the rink at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I sat at the end of the table. Mr. Risebrough was at the other end. I was a little hungover, so I just said, thank you for everything. I'm gone. He goes, if you walk, I'm trading you. Well, I know I'm being traded.
I heard you through the bathroom door.
The two teams were Toronto, and the other one was Hartford. So thank God I went to Toronto. So that's how I got out of Calgary.
Unbelievable. I want to talk about the Leafs, obviously, but I just want to reel back a little bit, just because it's something I wanted to ask you. And you did bring up, Wayne and playing with him. And 89, people remember you neutralizing Gretzky in that series. And I want to talk to you about how you played him and how you neutralized him. And some players I've talked to talk about coach tells them, okay, you're going to check Gretzky tonight, and they relate checking Gretzky very similar to checking Mario Lemieux, where they would almost kind of dog it, and so almost lull you into a feeling of comfort, and then they'd score a goal. So knowing that and knowing the way he was, how were you successful against him?
The biggest thing is when you're playing against a player like Wayne or Mario or how I played, I wanted to go at somebody and make sure that I drew at least 1 or 2 people towards me. So there's somebody on the ice that's free. So you always, when you play against Wayne, say, stay away from him, I got him. Okay, just kind of contain him on the outside. He's going to make a pass. We understand that. He's going to make some great plays. But don't go at him when I'm going at him, because he's going to find that open guy, and the next thing you know, it's in the net. So, again, Wayne wasn't hard to play against, meaning like physical side, but smart. Like he didn't know where he was going to go. You wanted to read what he was reading, what he was thinking, but he was above everybody. And it was obviously hard to play against him, but that competitive drive, you wanted to beat him.
Is there a switch that you could flip on him?
No, there's certain guys that play hard against you and certain guys that don't. And again, I learned a long time ago back to St. Louis when I was checking. We're playing in Long Island, playing against Brian Chache, Mike Bossy, and Clark Gillies. My roommate Brian Sutter, our captain, he goes, Charlie, whatever you do not wake up Gillies. Like don't be an idiot on the ice and wake him up. You wake him up, that line's going to go. And again, going through my career in certain games, maybe you're not quite into the game yet. All of a sudden, you get rocked. And it's like, well, why would you just wake me up? Now the game's on.
Interesting.
So, again, you try to stay, you know the Bears that you don't want to wake up, so you just let them sleep. Maybe they'll sleep for the whole game.
So it's one of the key elements is to almost have the psychological profiles of all your competitors and to know.
Oh, big time.
Interesting. To bring it back to baseball quickly, people talking a lot about this team and about Josh Donaldson and the trade that Alex Anthopoulos made with the Oakland A's to acquire Josh Donaldson, and people talk about what a lopsided trade that was. And when's the last time there was a lopsided trade like that in Toronto sports history? Well, I think we know the answer, you know.
And again, I didn't know there was that many other players in the deal. It was 5 for 5.
That's true.
It's a 10-player deal.
But one franchise clearly went in one direction, one franchise clearly went in the other direction.
And, you know, it did go south in a sense that we could have pretty much, not a dynasty, but very close to it.
Sure.
Like we had Al McGinnis, we had Gary Suter, we had a great abundance, Nieuwendyk, Roberts.
Yeah.
It's like, again, it was just so many great players, and it just dismantled because of it was almost hardship against me as a player, because again, I was kind of dirty and I didn't like him, and so that's what happened.
Kind of dirty, I love it.
Now he's a GM and he's trading me.
I think it says that on your hockey card, kind of dirty. I mind. Coming to Toronto, I mean, did you see it as a way to sort of, I don't know, prove the Flames wrong, or did you see it as a bit of a rebirth, or what was your sort of attitude, bless you, coming in?
Well, I knew some players. Obviously, I knew Wendell, Dave Ellett, Todd Gill, and got here is just like, okay, well, let's see where this team's got. And, you know, the first couple of games, we lost by a goal. I think we were 4 points out of the playoffs after the deal was done. We still had some guys injured. And then the next year, you know what, things change real quick. You know, you bring a gentleman like Pat Burns in that right away is just going to change the dimensions in the rink, the attitude, the focus, his demeanor, scare the crap out of you. So you don't even want to know. But he's one of those guys that I had a great relationship with him. We didn't say a lot. I just walk in the next day and he'd look at me and I said, I know, I'll be better.
A good match for you in terms of personalities, in terms of the way he approached the game, or not?
Yeah, I think Pat was, I didn't really know him. Obviously, had an opportunity to meet him the first couple of days I was there. Took me out for a couple of pops. That's who he was. He's a guy's guy. And he just said, this is what I expect. You better be the hardest working guy in practice. That'll carry over to games, and people will follow. And so I'm going to say the same thing to Wendell. I'm going to say the same thing to different guys. They'll follow. And he was right. It was just, it was a fun team to play for, and we all got along. We all went out together. And you talk about there was no jealousy on that team whatsoever. Everybody knew what their role was, and they accepted it.
And what about being well, folk hero is probably even underselling it, but this player on this great team in this great city, and the playoff run in '93 was that beyond what you could have imagined? I mean, I know how it felt for me, having my heart captured and my gut engaged by that whole run. But what are your impressions when you think back on that time?
Well, I was telling you a story earlier. Probably from here to the fish tanks, I lived right beside the gardens. So I'd walk out the door, walk to the tanks. I'm in Maple Leaf Gardens. I lived right beside it. Felix Potvin was 2 floors above me, and it was just convenient. There's no traffic. And it was something that we were down in that atmosphere. And I could tell you a quick Felix story on this too. So Felix, kind of a punk rocker. Mm-hmm. So I think this is before Green Day was big, but Green Day's playing. He goes, come on, you come with me tonight. And I said, okay, Felix, I'll go with you. Next thing I have a couple of beers, I look around, I can't see him. I look over, there he is in the mosh pit. I'm going, that's our friggin' goalie. Get back here. Don't drop him. So, but it was, you know what, everybody kind of hung together, and when we lost, we had a team party, and it was just, it was something that I think Pat Burns said it best when he came back before he passed. He said, "This was my favorite team by far." Yeah, I know he won the Stanley Cup in Jersey, but he loved that team.
It's interesting. It's interesting too when you know. It was a team that ultimately fell short, yet in people's memories, and I think today, moving forward, is a team that is still really loved by those who are able to watch it play. Yes, it's possible, sir. And even further tribute to you, you finished second in the Hart voting to Mario Lemieux, so clearly, there was obviously a huge presence. I won't ask about Carey Fraser because probably one of you guys will. So, but. And I want to get to questions in a minute, and I don't necessarily want to kind of rumble through the remaining years that you had playing pro hockey, but I just might because I'd like to ask you the question about being on the other side of the game, because so many different people deal with it in different ways, and we can never imagine with the feeling what it's like when you're in the shadow of so many years that you invest in the sport. But what was it like?
Well, again, I was blessed to play a game for 20 years. How much fun can you have going to work, getting to punch somebody and hit somebody every day for 20 years and not get charged for it? Like that, come on. So when the retirement comes, I needed 2 or 3 years to get away from hockey. And, it got into everything. It was like a mortgage company. I bought a house and rebuilt it, and I sold it to Sundin. It worked out great. Bugger sold it that much more later. But when it was time to come back, I worked with the Leafs a little bit. And then I got into coaching with the Marlies. And then I got into coaching with Kingston. And I've been 3 years as a general manager. And it's such a cool picture to see. Again, a lot of Ranger fans here, you see these kids that, whether they go on the NHL or they don't go on the NHL, to me the rewarding side is to see the kids that you never ever thought would take the school package and have gone to university and made something out of themselves. I love it. That's the rewarding side for this league.
And as GM, are you one-on-one? Because you do have to maintain a certain amount of distance, but is it important to you to really get involved in these players' lives?
Well, you're pretty much the principal, okay? If there's an issue, the parents want to talk to you, the agents want to talk to you, that's part of it. Like going into training camp, I hate training camp. I got to cut these kids, and some of these kids, that their dreams, are not fulfilling right at this point in time as a hockey player. So it's not a lot of fun.
Well, what do you tell the kid that you have to cut that's about to go into the next?
Just not ready. It's like, we need you to work on this. We need you to work on this, and again, the biggest thing is there's so many different rules. We have a 50-man roster, so going into the next year's draft, we have 14, 15 picks. I got to delete 15 players, so that means they're free agents. Right. They can go anywhere they want, but it's just this parts of it that it's not that much fun. So again, I was lucky enough to have and live that dream, and again now I got to make decisions on some of these dreams. So it's not an easy call.
What about being in the community where you grew up? Is it part of it about giving back at this stage in the game? And how do you do that? Yeah,
it really is. Having the opportunity to go back home, which is, again, I said earlier, with my mom and dad, and it's just, I got siblings there as well, and everybody knows me in Kingston just as far as growing up, and they see me there all the time, and so it's just, I'm an old hat there, so no big deal. But again, I haven't really got any time frame on what I want to do next, whether it's 2 years, whether it's 3 years. It'll be that time for me to challenge something else again, and what that is at this point in time, I'm not too sure. It's interesting. Do you see parallels? I mean, as a player, you developed and you were constantly changing and improving to become the best player that you were. Do you find that there's a parallel in post-hockey because you've done a bunch of things? And yeah, you got to love what you do, and I really do. I also have kids all over the place that university and one's over in Switzerland, and so it's there's a lot of other opportunities that I can challenge, and at the same time, it's time for somebody else to take over my job, and right. That we've kind of groomed, and it's your turn.
Nice. They can go watch Austin Matthews play when it's over in Switzerland.
There you go.
So we'll take some questions. I think Robin has the microphone. Just want to put up your hand, and Robin will get you the mic. And there's a young gentleman.
Doug, what did you feel like before playing your first NHL game?
Oh, I was nervous. I was really, really scared. In those days, our training camp was pretty much a month and a half long. So for 2.5 weeks, we'd have 2-a-days. In those days, we went to camp to get in shape. We weren't really in great shape. So there's a lot of changes, but to play, I think it took me 10 games to get my first goal. And I was pretty excited about it, but nervous. After I retired, that was a tough thing, because I didn't know what my name was. I thought my name was Boo. Every place I go to, I was like, Boo. Well, I like that side of it, because when you're doing something right in a visitor's building when they're booing you.
Does anyone ever boo you in a shopping mall, and it kind of warms your heart? Habs fan, maybe? Or no?
Not really.
What advice do you have for goalies?
Well, that's a tough one. Going into the draft for me, okay, I've been doing it like 3-4 years now. I can tell you right now, I let my scouts pick goalies, because I just said, stop the puck, please. That's all. I have no idea how to draft a goalie. My scouts do that for me.
It's a bit of a black art, is it not, though, in terms of, because goalies emerge?
All of the kids are projection. What I mean? Like, they're going to get better and better and better, so right. You don't know. And we have great goalie coaches that right. will, continue with the goalies. But again, that's one I'm lost at. So sorry about that. What's that?
She said, don't worry about it.
Okay.
Another question over here.
Doug, how do you feel after your first NHL goal?
Well, we didn't have cell phones in those days, so I went right to a payphone to call my mom and dad.
Game wasn't televised, I guess.
I don't think so, but I think it was KOHM radio in St. Louis that they could get by radio. Cool. So mom and dad could hear all the games, and that was Dan Kelly, the broadcaster, that they'd listen to. Yeah, legend.
And that was, you scored an Eddie Mio, is that correct? Did you beat him?
I don't know if it was Eddie Mio. I think it was Eddie Mio or Greg Stefan, but I'm pretty sure it was Eddie Mio.
Okay.
And I see Eddie once in a while. I bring that up.
That's right. Over here.
Who was your hero and the person you're looking up to when you're a child?
I would have to say it was my brother, David. He was 13 years older than I am. And so when he was playing with the London Knights, I was probably about 4 years old. So again, my brother had a walk-on tryout to the Expos. He was just a heck of an athlete. And if Grapes was here right now, he'd tell you how good he was. But he just didn't continue in the right path. So, but yeah.
Was he a pitcher?
Catcher.
Catcher. Wow.
Doug, have you got what words of encouragement would you get for young players? You were drafted very late, is that correct? Was it into the 200s? I think I'm right.
I was drafted in the NHL 7th round.
Yeah. So what words of encouragement would you have for other players in that situation, or waiting? They show up on draft day and they're so disappointed when they don't get there. That's a good question. I don't know if you're going to be not in the first round or second round, third round. If that was my son, no, I wouldn't. You're not going.
Why go there and be disappointed? It doesn't work that way. When I got drafted the 7th round, like I said, I was disappointed. I had a chip on my shoulder, and that's when I played against the Rangers, and Mike Eagles slapped me silly that, you know what, I got to figure this out now. And that's more or less what happened. And again, it was timing. I had the opportunity to go into St. Louis, but they didn't have a lot of draft picks that year, and make the hockey club.
Did you attend the draft?
No.
How did you find out you were drafted?
Well, I was playing in a ball hockey tournament and got in a fight and tore my cartilage, so I was on the way to the hospital to get my knee operated on.
Wow.
I didn't want anybody to know about it, so I would have been drafted 10th round.
That's right. Wow, that's beautiful. Unreal. Back there?
How many hockey fights did you do through your hockey career?
Oh.
We don't have all night.
You know what? The 20 years that I played, I'd just say probably average maybe 4 to 5 a year. With Gary Roberts and I were neighbors in Calgary. We'd bet every year for a case of beer on who had the most penalty minutes. So I'll tell you that in a second. So when I get traded to Toronto, here's a guy I've been driving with for 2 years, okay, every day to the rink. 2 minutes into the game, we're both in the penalty box. So, but
like real buddies.
Yeah. So Don Koharski was reffing this game, and so I think we had 2 games left, and I got Gary about 6-8 penalty minutes. So we're winning 6-2. I go up to Coho and said some language, bugger off, and he goes, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "Go to hell." He says, "What is wrong?" "I need 10 minutes. Just give me 10 minutes. He gave me 10 minutes, got out. And Roberts is on the bench going, "Are you kidding me?"
Beautiful. You talk about Mike Eagles, but what would have been the toughest fight that you were in? Or the toughest player that you had to go up against?
There's so many that you play against. Yeah. You want to know who I hated the most?
Sure. That'll work.
He was playing with Pittsburgh at this time, and I was in Buffalo. And one of my line mates that came from Chicago with me, J.P. Dumont, got knocked out, and Kasperitis. So Kasperitis, after the game was over, their bus is in our parking lot. So I was waiting for him. Wow. Waiting for him. And got in a little altercation. And then he jumped on the bus, and Matthew Barnaby was with Pittsburgh, and he called Rob Ray, and he goes, "What the hell did Gilmour do to him? He's on the bus shaking. He won't talk to anybody." Now, if anybody would have found that out, I would have been suspended for 10, 20 games. Wow. Who knows? So, yeah. But that, oh, well, yeah.
So it wasn't always when the helmet was on, then, is what you're saying? Sometimes when it
not
came
always,
off.
but just, yeah, my eyes were still spinning a little bit.
I'm a believer that there's more to building a team than just talent. What are your thoughts on the keys to building a team? And then my other question is, what are the keys to the Leafs' success now and then to the Jays' success now, since you're a fan?
Well, let's start with the Jays. I just think, you see the transition right there? As far as you add a player or 2, maybe 3, that just changed to make them that much better. So I'm going to kind of answer it all together. It's character. It's everybody accepting the role. And it's not just all talent, but it's about team performance. Team. Right? No I, team. And that's how it has to be. And again, you need skill, you need talent, but that work ethic's going to go a long ways. And again, team tough. And I just see how the Blue Jays are the kind of never die, never give up, right to the last inning.
Were you around? Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Were you at the park in 92, 93 when the Jays were doing their thing?
Of course I was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have was there ever crossover? Did you meet any of the guys?
Yeah. Met a lot of the guys the first year, and then really got to know Paul Malter really well, and great man, and you see he's doing great. I hope him all the best as well. So he's a great guy.
Nice.
Yeah, I just had a question. Growing up in Hamilton, we idolized the Leafs. I can remember my earliest memories with my dad sitting on the couch begging him to watch you play on Hockey Night in Canada. When you first put on that Leafs jersey, did you really realize the meaning that crest had to you then compared to now?
Yeah, it's we knew about it. You know, when you're playing junior those days, the Marlies would play at Maple Leaf Gardens in the afternoon. So we'd get there early enough to see the pro teams play. And again, grew up just like everybody. Hockey Night in Canada, 8 o'clock at night. You know, just you're going to stay up as long as you can to watch it. And it's something that, I was in Detroit, and I put the uniform on for the first time, and it was pretty interesting. Like, it was a dream come true. 100% it was. And I loved every team. Election time coming, so I'm very biased on this. I loved every team I played for. So, but it was like, honestly.
What was the team in the household when you were growing up? Was there a team?
Well, it was Toronto of Daryl, because my brother played with them, but it was also Boston Bruins. Grapes, Wayne Cashman, Rick Smith, they're all from Kingston, and they're all Boston Bruins. So I was like, when I was playing in Buffalo, you know, you get to Buffalo, all been there, and I'm like, really? And then I get there just in the right time when it's a bad winter. I look at the rink. At that time, it's HSBC. I know what it meant. Holy shit, Buffalo's cold. I was happy to get out of there, by the way. Thank you.
You mentioned Daryl. Your brother played with Daryl Sittler in London. Oh, incredible. Right here.
Can you talk a little bit about your return to the Maple Leafs in 2003, coming back for the playoff run? Mine too, buddy. I remember being so excited, and then obviously first game back, you get injured.
Yeah, I was on a road trip with Montreal. We played at San Jose, LA, went to Nashville to Florida, and Pat Quinn called and said, we would like you back as a third line for a playoff run. And is that okay? I said, yeah, sure. It's my 20th year. I'm probably going to shut her down anyways. And then, so I flew to Montreal, stayed overnight, flew to Toronto the next day. The team's already there. And then Toronto to Calgary, arrived about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock Calgary time, played the next day and got hurt. So I never really hurt my knee, like ACL, cartilage, but not like that. So I had no idea. I thought it was just like a bruise or something. Okay, I was crawling off the ice, and he was like, okay, it's coming back. Went in the dressing room, and he said, no, I'm okay. So I go back on the bench, and he goes, oh, hang on, just the trainer, come back over here. Drag your toe. Drag my toe, I went right on my butt. And I knew at that time it was done. So not much I could do about it.
Yeah, Doug. I was at the game in LA. I got 2 questions.
Yeah.
Number 1, would you sign my game program?
Of course.
Okay. Number 2, have you talked to Carey about that? Because I know that team would have beaten Montreal.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's in the form in LA, and the rules are, if the referee doesn't see it and the linesman see it, Gretzky's gone. So they're not going to kick him out of the game. So all the linesman had to say to Carey was, one, just say you saw it. So it's a 2-minute penalty, and it's 4-on-4. So, you know, a lot of things came out of that. Like we go into Game 7 at home, where we have an opportunity to go to the Stanley Cup Finals, and Damian Cox writes an article about Gretzky being brutal in this series, wakes him up, has one of his best games of his life, and beats us. And, you know, the one regret I do have about not coming back after my career is I would have loved to come back just for one game, lace up the skates, carry rapid, go up, mess his hair up, and go off the ice.
Make a good charity event, I think. One more or a couple more, maybe?
I have 2 questions. The first one is, what is the weirdest superstition or pregame ritual you ever witnessed in a locker room? And the second one is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good of a kisser is Don Cherry?
Well, like I said, Don, been a big supporter. His brother Dick Cherry still works on our scouting staff in Kingston, and family friends. So he would always say, do something. If you want your parents to see you on TV, you better do something. So he was always kicking me in the butt. Superstitious, oh boy, there's so many different ones, but nothing crazy. Yeah, well, for me, everything was right. Right. My right sock, my skate, everything has to be right. There's so many. Like, you'd change up if you lost or you're in a slump or something's happening. You would do something else. Like, listen, my first hat trick I ever had, I had Burger King that day for lunch. It's like, I had my grandparents in town. I didn't have time to really go home and, you know, eat pasta and chicken, whatever we're supposed to eat. So I had Burger King with them, and I had 3 goals that night. So it doesn't make any sense.
That's the Burger King on Yonge Street?
No, I was in St. Louis.
Got it. Just quickly about on the heels of the superstition, what about, like, just strangest character you've ever crossed in the game, or wildest character?
Spinner Spencer, yeah. There's so many. Like, there's just different.
The game attracts such interesting.
Just like heavyweight guys, like fighters were all different. Goalies were different. Right. So again, everybody was eccentric in their own ways, and it's too many guys over the years that I played with. That it's too hard.
Okay. Question here down front.
Doug, pardon the pun, but how handicapped, if any, are the Canadian teams in winning a further Stanley Cup?
Well, what do you think? Like, Toronto's got a heck of a lot of management right now, and it does. I'm not saying anything bad there, because I'm going to say another thing. Lou Lamoriello's a great man, and if he can give his advice to pass on to make this, you know, the coaching staff, the general manager staff, all that much better. It's going to take a bit of time, but hey, it's going to be electrifying in Alberta this year. You know, Calgary's got a good team. Edmonton, with McDavid, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. So, again, Montreal's a pretty strong club too. So they got the best goalie in the world.
And do you think generally things are looking better for Canadian teams on the whole, for the most part? Like, we're entering a bit more of an upswing because it's been down for so long.
Yeah, I think so. Again, I'm like you guys. I watch guys. I'm a fan. I'm also at minor hockey rinks all the time, so I'm not watching every game. So I just kind of check the scoreboard stats the next day. But if it's a Saturday night, I'm at home, I'm going to watch whatever's on. So that's obviously Hockey Night in Canada.
And were you the only one in the world who wasn't surprised by what Sam Bennett did at the end of the year last year for the Flames?
No, this kid, he's a special player too. And he was line mates with McDavid with the Marlies in the minor midget. So just my advice to Sam, now that you're there, don't let anybody take your job. So he can have a good career. Yeah. Good kid.
Yeah. All right, well, let's take one more, only because Ethel's has been up on the screen. All right.
St. Louis is a heck of a beer drinking town.
I heard that.
Yeah, you with Budweiser and everything else there. And I know you have a thing against goalies, but I don't know what it is that a goalie can get drafted by any team. They can throw piles of money at him, like in Philadelphia a few years ago, and he can last one season, and everyone gives up on him totally. It's just amazing how goalies are discarded so fast. I don't know why.
I'd be frustrated as a Philadelphia Flyer fan if I was from Philly, because they've never really gone after a goalie through the whole time, the whole playoffs. Good clubs, and they've never really put the right, partnership and goaltenders together. So, again, I think that's the.
Is it because of the fragility of the position, the psychological fragility that makes them break or build?
I have no idea. Like just how certain goalies are stronger than other goalies mentally. How does Carey Price do it? Like, how does he do it? And he was in the minors for 2 or 3 years before they brought him up.
And Andrew Hammond is another great example in Ottawa, right? Coming out of nowhere.
So you get that right opportunity and you get that confidence. And again, in the NHL, as an NHL player, you want to be here. If you're here, that's a mile up. If you lose your confidence, it's hard to get back up here. So again, you got to play for your team, okay, your teammates. You got to play for the fans. You're playing also for the media. So there's a lot of pressure on certain players. Certain guys can handle it, certain guys can't. I say absorb it, have fun, and you know what? All those guys that are sitting next to you that are going on the ice to go to war with, they're the ones you're going to count upon each and every night that don't let you down as well. And that's communication.
Whenever I get a chance to meet a pro athlete that is cut from the same cloth as yourself, I'm always so grateful for the honesty and the frankness and being upfront and genuine and real. So everybody, Doug Gilmour, thanks, Doug. And we have David Marksel's going to say a few comments.
Okay, thank you very much. A couple of quick housekeeping things. The auction will stay open for 15 minutes from now. If you need a designated driver's service, driver's seat is waiting outside for you. They'll negotiate anything you'd like. And I always want to make sure that we thank Dave Bidini for such a great job. Dave, I have a couple of quick questions. Your hockey website is slapshotdiaries.com. On Twitter, it's hockey-esque. And you were going to say a couple of words on Puck Talks. It's coming. Stay tuned. But thank you very, very much, David. For those who came with the VIP package, if you had a photo taken by Brent, one of our staff, be sure you leave your email or talk to Robin, and she'll make sure that you get those photos. For those of you who wish to have a quick photo, Doug has to keep going tonight. He's got to drive back home, so you won't have time for autographs and stuff. But if you want to line up on this side, come on up here. Doug will be around for a few more minutes to get some photos. Thank you very, very much, Doug. That was the best. You're the best. Thank you.
All the streetcars at the station waiting so long to the TTC. If you ever feel like trying